Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
All right, we're back. This is third week, going into the third week of January. This is our second podcast for the year with a guest since we had somebody sign up and actually show up. So big thanks to Shaun. I've known Shaun for probably about a decade now. We met through the ancestral pool of real estate investing. Another one of our mutual friends, Hard Money Bankers, the owners of Hard Money Bankers, Chris and Jason, used to put on a meetup up in Columbia, just outside of Baltimore, where Shaun invests at. So we became friends there. We've done we've done one or two panels together. And he's been part of the masterminds that we've been at, me and Mike have been at, with Ian Hurwitz up in Baltimore. So he's done a little bit of everything, and he's not a first responder, but he comes to us with a similar background and story that a lot of first responders have, kind of like come from the grit and then work up, learn which angles to work on, and then branch out into different investment parts of real estate investing. So Shaun, I don't want to give away too much. Can you just give me the background, like where you started, where you came from? Because I think it's kind of a cool story.
Sure, man. Happy to be here. And thank you guys so much for having me. And Happy New Year. I guess it's still early enough in the year to say that. I don't know. I think maybe all of January is fair game to say Happy New Year. But again, thanks for having me, guys. And the backstory. So I'll kind of go back a little ways, but I'll keep it brief. So after high school, I didn't have much direction of where to head, right? I wasn't planning on going to college. My folks split when I was younger, so dad was just doing what he could to keep the lights on and didn't steer me in the direction of college. So all of a sudden, all my friends are taking off for school, and I'm like, what do I do, right? What's next for me? So like many, I'd heard there was money to be made in the trades. And so I applied for some carpentry helper jobs and was pushing brooms around job sites, started learning a little bit about the trades. My family has a background in the building trades, and ultimately decided that I really liked it. And it was an honorable industry, an honorable space to earn a living. And I decided to get a formal education in the trades. So I went to a trade school in Pennsylvania where I was growing up. And I have an associate's of applied science with a major in carpentry. That's a real degree, I promise you. And so I have one. That's where my formal education ended. But from there, I started swinging hammers in the field. I was just swinging hammers, and I started working for different remodeling contractors and different builders, and ultimately decided to kind of segue into, well, I was working there in the field for a few years and getting to know some of the building material salespeople that would come to our job sites. And I was offered an opportunity one day. A guy came, he was selling windows and doors, and he was moving on to a new role. His position was becoming available. He asked if I'd have an interest. I decided to take a chance on myself. And I left the field for my first sales job and did very well there. And I was very fortunate at that company. The company's called Pella Windows and Doors. Some of the listeners may be familiar. Big brand, big window and door manufacturer. That company poured into their sales force. And I'm still reaping the benefits of those trainings to this day. But they really poured into their salespeople. And so I had some success there. That ended up kind of leading into some different sales and sales management and sales leadership roles in different building material manufacturer and wholesaling roles, and ultimately provided some time and financial freedom to allow me to kind of explore some other interests. And that's really the background. I mean, I was just swinging hammers to selling the stuff I was swinging hammers on, to now, having some time freedom and some financial freedom to go pursue real estate investing. And there's some reasons why I chose real estate, I'm sure we'll get into.
Shaun, were you, for Pella, were you the guy that was going out like bidding homeowners jobs?
Yeah, it was called retail. It was in retail sales. It was called Windows Made Easy was what the role was. But I would go into homeowners' houses and just sit at the kitchen table and sell replacement door and window packages. Right. Yeah, I wasn't working with builders at the time.
Windows sold cheap.
Yeah. I mean, what's that?
I said it sure as hell wasn't Windows sold cheap, because I know Pella historically was
crazy.
Significantly more expensive, Yeah. But they weren't selling typically to like the guys flipping houses, they were selling to like Bob and Mary at the kitchen table. They've lived here 30 years type thing, right?
That's exactly what it was. And I mean,
so when you say you're still reaping some of the benefits and they poured into that, like what exactly? Like, so it was like a professional sales company more than it was a window company.
Yeah. They would bring in, no, it was very much a high-end building material manufacturer for sure, but they would bring in outside contractors and consulting firms to really teach like 101s and drill down on more than just 101s, but they would really drill down on their sales force. So teaching different sales tactics, because we were in the retail space, when we'd go into people's homes and sell, it was a different approach than a business to business. So business to consumer versus business to business. You're meeting with contractors on the trades, you're building relationships, you get some residual sales from that. But every time we would go in, it was just starting from scratch each time. And there was a very much a process. And I did very well with it. I mean, I was very coachable. I was young. I was 22 years old. I was coachable. And, I didn't have my own ego. My ego wasn't super inflated yet. It wasn't, not that it is now, but my ego wasn't super inflated, wasn't influenced yet. I was still pretty malleable. And so I was able to take their lessons that they were pouring into us and just apply them. And I got risky. I tried some cool things. I tell some stories about that. I have what's called this porch light close. For 2 years running, I had the second highest closing ratio in the United States of America for Pella as a first time close. So the first time going into a house, I'd walk out of there 58.6% of the time with someone's money. That was huge. The average was around 30. But why? Because I tried so many different things. I just didn't know better, right? I laugh because I would try this porch light close and I would sit there and I would see that there was some kind of awkward tension in the air between Mr. and Mrs. And first of all, I would never run one-legged appointments. I always had both decision makers there. That was a big part of the success. If I had to have one, it was obviously the Mrs. And because we all know she's the decision maker ultimately. But then I would see, hey, you guys seem like you need to talk about this. My phone's been vibrating. Why don't I step outside my car? I'll take a listen to these voicemail messages. When you're ready, you guys talk amongst yourself. When you're ready for me to come back in, just flick the lights and I'll come back in. And that shit worked a few times. So I tried lots of things, man. I tried lots of things and it was, I learned a lot then, but to this day, I mean, it was a corporate environment. So I got business acumen lessons early on at a young age where I was able to, I write a professional and thorough email today because of those lessons from back then, right? Those types of things.
Do you think
they offer to you?
Oh boy.
Sorry, go ahead, Tyler.
No, did they offer you guys like any like formalized sales training, like Sandler or anything like that? I'm just curious because I know like there's different.
They did, yeah. There was, I don't remember some of the names. I mean, I left there in 2010, so this is going back quite a ways.
Okay.
Sales,
I guess the only reason I ask is that's for people listening and a lot of people that want to hop into real estate investing or anything. It's cool if you can go get a job like that offers. Obviously, you had some type of sales training there. It doesn't really, I guess, matter who, but you're getting paid to learn. So that's what I was thinking. It's like, hey, you can go take a job, especially like a second job doing sales nights and weekends. Learn the whole process on somebody else's dime, and you can come out on the other end and hopefully make some sales for the company. Obviously, so it's not just a one-way street. But at the end of it, you come out with formalized sales training. So that's all I was curious because I know a lot of people like they go into these big like pharma companies, whatever. They learn these sales processes, and they're usually more successful when they hop out on their own.
Yeah,
I mean, the swinging the hammer thing, Shaun. Do you think that like here? Let me step back. So when I was a kid, we were very similar. We had a similar upbringing. We both swung hammers, and that kind of transitioned into the next trade. So for me, I was doing arson investigation and building codes constructions in the fire service. So understanding how a building went together was a big help for me to transition into the next phase of the fire department or arson investigation. This is 25 years ago. So for you, do you think that the building codes going into the windows and helping to explain like how these things are made, how these things are built, and then transitioning into real estate investing made a big difference?
Tremendously so. No question. I mean, we were doing replacement window and door packages and homeowners would not fully understand what was about to happen. And I could thoroughly explain it to them, right? For sure. I mean, I knew what was going on behind the walls. I knew how to replace those windows myself. If they were, there's two different types of installations for a window, I won't go into all that, but I could explain both pretty, I know we don't need to teach people how to replace windows in the podcast, but yeah, I would, absolutely. And very, very much so, because these are typically just, a homeowner that doesn't have a clue about building materials or construction or rehab, and their house is going to be torn open. It was in Pennsylvania, so depending on the time of year, how long is my house going to be exposed to the elements? We could speak to some of that. And I could walk them right over to the window and say, this stays, this goes. And that was very helpful. So, and I could explain the framing of an opening, a jack stud, a king stud, the header, and all the things involved of, why we can and can't do the things they might want to do. I want to open this wall and put a bigger door in. Well, you can't, right? Here's why. So yeah, for sure. It definitely helped.
It's funny. Last night I had a conversation. I think he's a mutual friend of some of ours. He doesn't understand the difference between like a gas generator and an inverter generator, and didn't understand of a house generator and backfeeding into the panel. So I spent like a half hour talking to this real estate investor about different types of generators, because some of the people who live at his house require oxygen. And I was like, how do you not know this? Like and he's not a small investor. Like he's a pretty well-known investor in his arena, but he has no idea like about generators. I'm like, how do you not know this? Like, and I told my wife, I was like, I don't know how to deal with men who don't know these things. Like, I don't understand.
Right.
Like, I don't get it. Like, how do you not? This is something that I learned when I was like 5. So like, I get it. I think that having a background and understanding how a house goes together helps you sell, build, and break a house, whether it be in the fire department, we're doing deconstruction, balloon frame, if it's on fire, if it's going to chase up all the, the second, third, fourth story. I think it's important if you're in the trades to know how things go together. So hats off to you for that. So I don't want to dwell too much on this because I know that there's a lot more meat and potatoes to your story. So let's get into the transitioning from sales into the next phase, because I know you're traveling nationally and speaking nationally on that. So tell me what you're doing after the trades.
So after the trades and after selling and sales leadership, I started building a rental property portfolio. So back in 2015, I responded to an ad for a national real estate investment education company. I responded, I joined, I started learning the lessons. I mean, this is a point, I'd never heard of hard money. I'd never heard of RIA. I'd never heard of some of the terms we all use today. Mike, you're smiling, right? Like these are just like part of our vocabulary today. But at the time, I'd never heard of that, right? If you said RIA to me, I would think you might have like, you might be stroking out. Like it's an unfinished word. What is RIA? So, but now I understand it. So, or obviously I do.
So what is RIA? Just because we joke, but I'm sure there's somebody listening. It's like, what the hell are they talking about?
That's fair. Real Estate Investor Association. So RIA, National RIA, is based out of Denver, Colorado. And there's a lot of local subsets of that in your own home market. Bigger metros tend to have RIAs. Think about an organized real estate meetup specifically. And they provide education, networking opportunities in that. But a RIA, that's what REIA, Real Estate Investor Association. So I responded to one of these ads. So I realized that what I was doing, I didn't want to trade time for money. If you see the book over my shoulder, this side here, we've all read that book, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if those that are just listening. Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Harry Potter.
Dude, Harry Potter. Come on, man. Harry Potter. I've never read Harry Potter, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad speaks to the differences in liabilities and assets. And at a young age, it kind of taught me a lesson there, right? And so I knew that what I was doing was trading my time for money. I didn't want to do that forever. I didn't have a passion for what I was doing either. And so I started, and I always thought real estate made sense for a few reasons. I am in the building construction space, the material space. I fully understand what happens with a tangible asset like a home. I can look at it and fully understand it. And also the barrier to entry, which we can get into, is actually much lower than most people really realize. And so you didn't have to have a 4-year, 8-year, whatever degree to become a realtor, right? I joked on a recent podcast that there's a lot of agents that were one-time bartenders and service industry specialists, right? And so it's very common. There's the barrier for entry for real estate is kind of low, and so it made sense based on my degree and to pursue that. So anyhow, through this education program that I joined, I started learning about how to fix and flip houses. And that was in August of 2015. November of 15, I attended an event. I think it was November of 15. I attended an event in Nevada, and they were hosting this national thing. And one of my buddies was on a panel. He said, "Hey man, sit in on this marketing, this panel. It's a free dollar, no dollar, low dollar marketing panel." Because like many, I was attending these RIA events, and I was kind of intimidated to get engaged because it seemed like everybody knew everybody else. They all knew more than me. And so I would just sit like a fly on the wall and just like a wallflower and do my time a total disservice. But then I attended this event and I realized, okay, he kind of turned my eyes on turn my mind onto this concept of just adding one team member or one person to my team each event that I went to, make it like digestible. You go to this room of 200 people, it's a little intimidating. And so he said, your goal is to add one person to your team at each event you go to. All right, that seems doable. So I went and I did that. And I approached a guy and he seemed approachable. We shared information. We got together for coffee shortly thereafter. And I laid out some of my goals and some of my intentions. And he said, man, he's kind of a people connector. And he said, you need to meet this guy for your landlording goals and meet this guy for your flipping goals. Because I really wanted to flip some houses, maybe eventually be able to buy some rental properties. At the time, HGTV and all the shows were really hot. And so flip this house. It's something I had an interest in. And so I started down this path. November of 15, I put my first flip under contract, closed on it in January of 16. And then in the meantime, I met a guy who introduced me to the BRRRR strategy, which I had never even heard of before. Buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. And I'd never heard of that, right? I thought I was going to have to flip a whole bunch of houses, stockpile a whole bunch of cash, and then be able to afford buying rentals. So he introduced me to this concept. So in January of 16, I bought my first flip. In June of 16, I sold that flip, made $21,315. I'll never forget it. But more importantly, I had 5 rentals under construction at that point. So I went hard on the rentals. In that first year, I bought 18 doors. And, the rest is history. Just been kind of grinding since. So that's kind of how I got into it. Shaun? It was all Baltimore. Yeah, all in Baltimore. Okay. Yep. And so that's kind of how I got into the space. But then you asked specifically about speaking and coaching. A few years later, after having some success, applying this as an operator in the field, I decided to, I wouldn't say recruited, but they asked if I had an interest. And so if in coaching, so I started doing some coaching for that company. That led into some traveled speaking, which was really cool. So pre-COVID, I was traveling around the country speaking and coaching for this real estate investment education company. So of course, COVID hit, that all went away.
Yeah, COVID was the kicking the gonads.
Yeah, not filling rooms and talking hot air on people, blowing hot air all over people. Not when there's a pandemic going on outside.
So I'm going to bite my tongue on that one.
We're all on the same. Yeah, we're probably on the same page there.
Do you think that the transition was beneficial for you to start speaking? So, can we name them? Are we allowed to talk about them?
Sure.
So Fortune Builders is who you used to speak for, right? Fortune Builders they're a national company. They go around and they host these really big conferences. They rent out Marriott, Hyatt, whatever conference rooms. They have a couple hundred people in there, and they try to get people to invest and blah 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 blah. So you went there and you were the person who was speaking and engaging with these people to give money, start investing, try to change their mindset. Is that pretty much accurate? Am I missing anything?
No, actually, my role in the speaking. So that you're all right about what they would do back then. I mean, things look totally different now. Apparently, for the company, I'm not involved at all anymore. But they would definitely fill rooms, host free events, then low dollar events, and then they have a big ticket sale. Where my role was after people joined, I peeled back the curtain to show them what they got and how to use it. We take them on bus tours, do repair estimators, kind of help them with marketing and building the business from start to finish. So I was what's called a full immersion speaker. So it was a two-day weekend where we would what you just joined 2 weeks after joining. So that person that would be on stage selling from stage, after the people joined 2 weeks later, I got them and we met in a room with a few dozen usually, and I'd peel back the curtain and show them what they had and teach them how to use the tools that they had just bought.
So
what? Go ahead.
That company I know gets shit on a lot, frankly. They advertise, free real estate meeting in your area. They get you in. And this is where I think sometimes people because I run a local meetup and some people, this one guy refers to it as the mousetrap, or did refer to it as the mousetrap. And I was like, what do you mean? And he basically described Fortune Builders. And I was like, well, frankly, it costs you nothing to come here. I have nothing to sell you. And so I think it's a little bit different. But I say all that because I think people shit on that company and that model. And while it's not something I necessarily subscribe to or did per se, some of those things where you're paying 10, 20, 30, $50,000 to get coached, right?
Yep.
And I think everybody's immediate reaction is like, that's crazy. But for the very, very few people that actually do it and actually see it through, there's some people that have made 10 times whatever money they put into. And chances are those people would be successful in just about whatever they did, but they had the trait of like seeing it through. But I think a lot of times investing in education kind of gets a bad rap. And like we said, the barrier to entry in real estate's kind of low. So you get like that like sleazy car salesman vibe a lot of times from people. But there are people out there that like, yes, it might cost a little bit of money to invest your time, effort, and energy and whatnot, but you get so much out of it if you actually put forth the effort, right? And that's just something I don't want to defend those coaching models, but you know, you can go learn most of that stuff for free via podcasts, YouTube, etc. And I know we interviewed the guy that I coached, and I told him all of that, but at the end of the day, he needed somebody to just kind of hold him accountable. And he did all the work. And I've told him this, like, I just basically helped keep you accountable. And he went out and got a couple houses, like, but he could have done that on his own. But sometimes it's like, we all know how you could probably get a 6-pack too, right? But if you have a trainer or a nutritionist, you know, it's like, what are you doing? You're paying for speed and proximity. So
that's exactly where I was about to go with that.
I just felt like a need to chime in on that one because people shit on paying for education a lot, and I think sometimes it gets a bad rap.
I love what you just said, man. I support everything you just said, and I'm in full alignment with it. This morning, we're in Maryland. We just got about 4 inches of snow. I'm south of Baltimore. We got about 4 inches of snow. My kid's 2.5 years old, and we've never had a snow day. I went to the gym at 6 o'clock this morning and drove through the snow to get there because I had a trainer waiting for me. He's an accountability partner in my. If it weren't for him, I was going to make snowballs with my kid when he woke up. Right, no doubt. I was pumped. I was excited.
Which I'm sure you still will.
I had to miss that. I probably will this evening when I go home. But yeah, I still that accountability is everything, man. I've got a coach. I do some coaching. I have a coach for my coaching business. I have a trainer at my gym as an accountability partner. Cognitive behavioral therapy, if you know what that is, just kind of dealing with tweaking your mind and how you see things. I mean, I've had
we call it the kitchen table in the fire department. Yeah.
I mean, stuff's important. It is important. This stuff is like, it is legit to have those accountability partners. But to your point specifically about this company and their coaching, the product it's almost unrivaled from what I've seen. Right? And I've run a small coaching business. I've seen other coaching programs. The product is unbelievable. Now, as far as selling it, I'm with you. They've got a reputation. Maybe it is earned. I think that if I were to convince a single mom on a single income to go out and ask her to call the credit card companies and increase the limit so she could come tomorrow and swipe it, I would not sleep well that night. Right? That's not my thing. I'm not saying that company did that, but there's a reason they got some reputation that they did. I don't know if it was that specifically, but you're right. To invest in education is often kind of shit on in the entrepreneurial space because we are all independent. I can do it. I got this. And you're right. YouTube, man, you can learn anything from YouTube. I use YouTube all the time. So would I do it differently today than I did it back then? Probably, maybe. But nonetheless, it did get me where I am. So I have to give them some credit, right?
And you don't know what you don't know. Like when you went into the space, you said you didn't know what real was, you know. So now you do because you know what you didn't know back then. So hindsight, as they say, is always 20/20. One of the things I like that you mentioned was mindset. So you have different coaches and different people for different aspects of your life, whether it be mind, body, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, sexual, whatever your thing is. There's always coaches out there for you to fix whatever you have in there. And Mike was saying that, you know, that's our round table at the firehouse. We talk about virtually everything. We can solve the world problems at the round table. So let's talk about mindset for a minute. So when you were coming up, you know, single dad, you know, came from the grit, kind of bootstrapped your way to where you were then. Like, how does your mindset shifted? And actually, this is going to be a question for all three of you. How has your mindset shifted since we were younger to where it is now? Like, do you see the world in a different way? And how do you think that has changed your future? Anybody can jump in.
Yeah, we went like level 10 deep in 30 seconds.
That's a broad question. Yeah.
Whoa.
The thought softball here, guys. Come on.
Well, I'll start. I mean, just as far as mindset goes, and I think it goes back to the whole coaching thing, it's completely changed because, you grow up like blue collar stuff like that. Todd Swaggerty and I talk about this all the time. You grow up in that kind of environment, you already have like these limitations that are placed internally that you don't even realize, but they're there because that's what you grow up knowing your whole life. And then you get around people in different rooms with different mindsets, and they show you, oh man, there's a ton of stuff out there that's possible that I never even thought myself personally because, oh, I grew up in a blue collar household, or my family's always worked in the trades, which are all really good jobs, but it's just, the more you continue to pursue the whole mindset thing, I think it opens your eyes up to, wow, there's a ton of possibilities out there in all aspects, financially, everything like that. So for me personally, seeing that firsthand, acknowledging it, and then trying to fix it has been the biggest change for me.
I
Mike,
think.
what about you? Or Shaun?
Mike.
Either one.
No, go. What do you got, Mike?
I don't really know. I've always had a little bit of a entrepreneurial spirit to me ever since I was young. So, as far as it relates to that, like, I can't think of a major shift other than whenever we found out we were having our first baby. That's whenever I kind of, like, I would say, acted on many of those thoughts. But other than that, like, I know I've always looked at stuff a little bit differently. Not like Elon Musk differently, but I can't think of anything other than that was like the defining moment per se. So I don't know.
I don't know that I have a defining moment either necessarily, but I will say at 40 years old now, thinking back on who I was back then, the limiting beliefs that I had have been lifted. I think a lot of that is because I've taken chances on myself, I've taken risks on myself, and some have not worked out, and I've learned from them. I've applied those lessons so that it didn't happen again, and I grew from that. I think also, because you're talking specifically, your question was mindset. I think, the cliche of your network being your net worth and having some imposter syndrome, getting in the right rooms and realizing that everybody that you thought was, you weren't worthy of is just another human, and you are worthy of. I think that just exposure and taking a chance on yourself. And so, I used to have this, and I still say it all the time, which sucks, but if it is to be, it's up to me. You've probably heard that before. And that's a pretty limiting belief, right? I mean, my dad, like I mentioned earlier, he was at 15, my mom left and my dad worked around the clock, and I'd have parties at the house, and we had to be responsible because we didn't want to burn the place down. We didn't want to destroy the house. We had to be responsible. I know that's an interesting pun. I didn't mean to pull that.
It's not a party till something's on fire in there.
That's right. I love that. That's funny. But, so I didn't, there was a lot of this kind of, not to shit on my old man at all. He's the most wonderful man I know, but there was a lot of raising myself to some degree. And so this, if it is to be, it's up to me thing. And then realizing, wait, man, I mean, you probably also heard if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Right. And so realizing that it does take a team, and me taking this, like, I got this mentality down and knocking that chip off my shoulder and getting rid of some limiting beliefs that I might have had for myself. I'll tell you, for a long time, and moving to Baltimore, I met a girl on a dodgeball team who later became my wife, but she was friends with a bunch of, research scientists at Johns Hopkins, a lot of PhDs, a lot of smart people. And I was intimidated by that. Here I am with an associate's degree in friggin' carpentry, right? I'm like, what do I have? But then I realized we're all equals here. They may be more educated than me in one specific space, but it doesn't mean they're more intelligent than me. And so I guess removing some of those limiting beliefs that I had for myself is the big one.
Do you see a time period in your life where those limiting beliefs were taken away from you?
Sales.
Like
when I got into that
20s,
sales,
30s or something. What was it?
Early 20s. When I got into that sales role, I would go into these people. It started developing a different kind of confidence that I had before. I was never arrogant. I was not I was not an athlete. I didn't have any reason to be arrogant, but it was very, it provided a lot of confidence, learning how to sell. It really did. I know that sounds kind of odd to say, and even hearing myself say it kind of feels that way. But yeah, I think getting into that sales role, my early to mid 20s, and reading books like that one and others, I've got a lot of mentors and authors that I've ever met, and some that are dead, and they just open your eyes to a bigger world, and they allow you to bring down your guard.
So there's three things I want to touch on just in this conversation. So the first one is, my sister gave me this for Christmas is 52 weeks of joy and inspiration. And it's just like a nice little saying of every, and I haven't even, this is like the second time I've opened it or even looked at it. And when we started having this conversation, I opened it. And the first one I opened is, it's a quote that says, "The ability is what you're capable of doing. Motivation determines what you do, and attitude determines how well you do it," by Lou Holtz. And like, I opened that during this podcast and I was like, huh, that's interesting. Second part of that is, grew up around DC. So my boy Reggie, he played football for JMU. Before he went to college, he thought all white people were rich, racist, and smart. And when he got to college, he was like, well, that's not true. They're just like me. So like there's once you get exposed to certain things and certain elements and you're around different people, what you don't know, but they might change your mindset and open up new doors and windows to show new opportunity and new perspectives on things. And I think that's important. That's the biggest thing I want to take away from this podcast is like, Shaun is the kind of person, he opened himself up to opportunities and then he capitalized them as he grew into the person he is today. So we're still all evolving. All Tyler, Mike, me, and Shaun are all still evolving into the person, hopefully a better person down the line. And that's the thing. If you're listening to this, don't limit your beliefs and don't limit your capabilities by saying, I am who I am. This is what I am. I don't care. Don't try to change me. Because if you're not constantly evolving, you're going to be in a stagnant place. And that's usually a very dark road to go down to.
Yeah. Have an open mind. Don't be a dipshit. And you can learn something from everybody, you know, like we could.
Dude, for sure.
But so Shaun, kind of like, what does your business look like today? I know you got a couple different things going on, and maybe we can hop on and discuss a couple of things about whatever businesses you want to chat about.
Yeah. What the business looks like today, I run what's called Monument City Group, which is a collective of 3 different real estate investment businesses: Monument City Homes, Holdings, and Capital. Monument City is just a nickname for Baltimore. Monument City Homes was our active house hustling business. So when we were doing outbound direct-to-seller marketing and wholesaling, flipping, it was in that business. Monument City Holdings is my branded rental property portfolio. While I own units under different entities, that's the one that's branded. And the Monument City Capital is my boutique hard money lending business. That's what that looks like. And then we've recently started what's called the Property Investing Academy, which is a real estate investment education company. So most of my time these days, we're not actively house hustling anymore. I have an assistant in-house that manages my rental property portfolio. And so my time is spent on the hard money side and on the coaching side.
So
Nice.
When we had the mastermind, I guess it was like 2 or 3 years ago now. How long ago was that?
The LFG one?
Yeah.
The first one?
The first one was almost 2 years ago. The last one was November a year ago, right? Wasn't it 2022?
The last one was in New Orleans.
Oh,
the
right.
one
I
in
didn't get to
Baltimore, that was like 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. So
Everything's the other day to me. So
I agree. Everything. Was it before I had my son or after I had my son? Before my wife was pregnant or after my wife was pregnant? Which is actually also small world. It's funny that Shaun's wife actually went to one of the rival schools. She's lived in the same county that I grew up in, which I thought was kind of funny. It's a very small world.
BC, before child.
Yeah, before child.
80 after delivery. Got it.
So Shaun, that LFG mastermind, would you recommend? Actually, I'll ask all 3 of you. Do you guys recommend going to masterminds like that, or masterminds in general, or these RIA meetups, or anything like that? Do you think it's beneficial for everybody?
Absolutely. I'll jump right in on that. Absolutely. The one you asked about specifically, LFG, it's a buddy of ours, a mutual friend of all of ours that, put together predominantly a storage/commercial investment type of a group is really what it seems to be catered to. But nonetheless, even I, as a residential operator, pulled a ton of value from that. Just being in a room with operators that are doing it at a high level is beneficial as all hell. Not necessarily specific to the asset class that they're investing in, but just being around good people doing it the right way is tremendously valuable. And also, I mean, you think about this, guys, we're all kind of on an island. You guys have this podcast. You guys get together and talk about this pretty often. That's cool. But otherwise, you're probably on an island like I am, right? You're just kind of doing it yourself and building it yourself. So it's nice to come together and learn of new tools, new resources, things you weren't familiar with before, different ways to do things, introductions to new people that can broaden your horizons. Yeah, 100%. These networking events, masterminds, RIAs, local meetups, all of them are tremendously valuable for a lot more reasons than I was just rattled off, for sure.
Mike and Tyler, what do you guys think about them?
Yeah, I echo everything he just said, but absolutely. And that's one of those, I've said it before, it does typically cost money to go to stuff like that or invest an investment. I remember I got tore up for saying that once.
Cost versus investment.
You're going to invest some money to be in a room like that. And I think a lot of people, there's two responses you typically get, like, you paid how much versus like, that's it, and that tells you everything you need to know about the people that are in the room or not in the room. Sure. And I typically find that if somebody is paid to be there, the basically pedigree in that room, a lot of this depends on where you're at in your journey too. Like, because you can get in a room like I run for my local meetup, it's free. And there's some people like that the topics and stuff we're discussing in those rooms blows people's minds. Right. And then like, if you're further along in your journey, you might pay to be in this other room, and you just kind of keep moving up that ladder. Right. And, but you mentioned it, talked about storage and commercial real estate as a whole, but I've had numerous conversations about many other things in that group. And Tyler and I met in a group similar to that. And, oftentimes you join to learn like all the little tactical things about how to send this postcard and, this, novation and all this stuff. But then what I typically find is the biggest takeaways is like not necessarily the tactical programs and apps and softwares. It's the strategic thinking that a lot of these folks do, that you just can't help but to think bigger sometimes when you get around folks like that. And to Shaun's point about feeling like you're on an island, it's easy, even if you're intentional about your mindset, to start to kind of just become like, the biggest opponent you have is in the mirror type thing. And you get in a room like that, it's like, you know what? His story sounds a lot like mine. I could do that, so if nothing else, you just start to think bigger in a group like that, I find. So I'm a big fan.
I'm a huge fan too. I mean, and to kind of echo on those sentiments, it's like, go where you're at. So the free information is obviously awesome. It gets you a real good introduction into what you're looking to do, and then slowly go up. Like my first mastermind or paid thing was $97 a month. It was called the House Flipping Formula with Justin Williams, which became 7-Figure Flipping, which Bill Allen now owns. And that's who Mike was referencing when he got chewed up a little bit and was told that it was an investment and not a cost, which I totally agree. It is an investment. And then as you move up, there's different rooms you can get in that cost a lot more money. And there's a lot of groups that are above what Mike and I have already done that are close to 6 figures a year. But those people don't even bat an eye when they get to that point, because they're not willing to take all the time that would be required to learn the skills that they're looking to learn. They want to go somewhere specifically to where people have already done their investment is, let's say, 6 figures, whatever. And they know by the time they're done there, it's just going to cut that learning curve in half, which is going to increase their income, which is going to save them time and money. And it's just going to pour rocket fuel on your business. So I think like the free stuff is good, but at some point, I feel like I said, even if it's only $97 a month, do it, because it's going to hold you accountable. You're now paying for something. You're just that much more likely to learn. And then once you get there and you're like, okay, well, there's questions in this group that I cannot get answered. Where can I go get those questions answered? Ask people how they like the group. I think like Mike was talking, the group that him and I were in, most people would highly recommend that group. There's other ones out there, same thing. Continue to move up once your needs are no longer being met. And I think there's honestly no limit. And the biggest people in the industry still have coaches. I mean, you go anywhere, like there's people that I admire that they have speaking coaches now because they want to get better. They want to communicate their message better. So there's all those things. Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of it. Yeah. And the one thing I will say is a lot of people always get hung up on, well, everybody is already doing it. Why am I going to jump in? Because I'm not going to be able to do XYZ business. And there's somebody that I'm paying for coaching over the last year. And he always says, I'll tell you why, because most people don't do shit. He said, most people show up, they don't do anything, and then they complain that the program didn't work, when in reality, it's them that wasn't doing the work required to be successful. So that $97 a month, if that's going to make you accountable, do it. Like Mike said with his coaching student. This has got to be a lot of money. There's a lot of groups out there. All it's doing is flipping that switch. It's, hey, I am now accountable to myself and other people to do the things that I said I'm going to do. So yes, highly recommend masterminds.
Yeah, can I piggyback on that?
Yeah, but let me just jump in there real quick. So the only thing I would say about that is I'll play the fence on this one. Not everybody is geared towards taking a master's class. I'm gonna go back to what Shaun said, class 101. So you need to know your role, know your position. Like, are you in the 101 class with the associates, or are you in the 301 class with the masters, or whatever it might be? Are you a bachelor's? Are you right in the middle? Do you want to grow to a master's? Do you want to be, in the middle, like part-time? So for me personally, and me and Todd have talked about this before, is I don't want to do more than 5 houses a year. I don't want to do 10 houses a year or 15 houses a year. It's just, I don't have the bandwidth and capacity for it. And I know what my numbers look like. I'd rather do, and Mike says this before, I'd rather do one house for $1 million than 10 houses for $10,000 a piece. And that's my thing, is like, just know the role you're getting into. Don't jump into a master's group if you can't speak the language, you don't know what that's being said. And it doesn't matter if it's power washing or gardening or real estate investing or fire department or selling windows. Like, you just got to know where you're at and where you want your end goal to be. And that goal line might change down the road as you learn more and grow, but you should always set the goal and then change the goal post as needed. So Shaun, go ahead.
You're right. And I mean, I do think, everything you said there, especially about your things changing down the line. I mean, are you guys seeing a flickering in my lights by the way? Is this just on my end? Okay. Something's on my screen. Anyway, where did this Harry Potter thing come from? So Mike, you said something about when you're in those rooms, you kind of get a charge, right? There's an emotional something that happens when you're around people that are forcing you to level up. I attended an event in New York City. It's called the Aspire Tour, and it's hosted by a couple of private equity guys. And it was just like a one-day concert, if you will, for kind of like a concert for entrepreneurs. They had Barbara Corcoran and Alex Rodriguez come there, and all these high-level speakers. And you leave there like ready to run through a wall, right? So like doing that, when you're on an island all the time, to go to an event like that, you kind of get a new fresh charge to go back and come back and implement. And because you're thinking, well, I could kick my feet up and play another game on my phone, or I could remember those people at that event. They're probably running circles right now. Let's keep the phone down and let's get to work. And then Tyler, something you said, a lot of the people that join these programs don't necessarily take action, right? They really don't. I spent a lot of my time on coaching calls convincing people that just spent tens of thousands of dollars to learn how to be a real estate entrepreneur to even have an interest in being an entrepreneur. I'm like, what are we doing here, man? There's nothing more deflating than walking a horse to water and watching them not just stand there, not drink, right? It's annoying. So it does.
I'll just never understand humans.
No, it very much, it's so true. And so I like that. But I think that the big point there I wanted to make was on Mike. I mean, I agree with you, dude. When you're in those rooms, you're learning tactical stuff you can apply, yes, but the emotion that's in those rooms that you can take with you when you go back to work it's worth the investment, whatever that investment is, assuming you can afford the investment. You're not an irresponsible idiot, right?
Yes, that should go without saying. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I find it really recalibrates or calibrates you initially. So you talked about you're looking to do some coaching, and I know you are primarily, or at least the last time I had spoke with you, were heavily focused on building out Monument City Capital. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
So I guess how does Monument City Capital look? How's that? That's I would say your day-to-day business at this point.
Yeah,
is that correct?
That's where I'm most active, is in Monument City Capital, the hard money business. Yeah.
Shaun, hang on a sec. Let's talk. So we had Faisal Morsi on here. Faisal Morsi referenced Shaun Magner as his hard money lender. Faisal was the guy who owns Pinpoint Skip. Shaun lent him money on the most recent flip. So let's go there.
Yeah. No, I mean, Faisal's a good buddy, great dude, really good buddy. He and I have had a lot of conversation, kind of business strategy 101 type of stuff, or not 101, but more business strategy, whiteboarding. He and I sat down maybe about a year ago, kind of laid out some of the things he had going on and some different strategies. And I'm really proud to see his business kind of do what it's done. He's a killer in that space. He's a smart guy. He's a go-getter. It's really cool to watch him grow. But my primary, what occupies most of my time these days, is Monument City Capital. So Monument City Capital, I raise capital from friends and family, and my own capital I lend, and primarily in Baltimore, the Baltimore Metro, all of Maryland, and South Central PA, back where I have some ties. And I mean, what specific questions might you have regarding the business? I mean, hard money in general, like what it is, and
Numbers,
I mean,
points.
I'm sure it's from your audience.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, maybe just so like I know I've mentioned it, like how because I think knowing what I know about your business and some of our mutual friends, our hard money business is set up extremely similar to yours. So maybe just from a 30,000 foot view, talk about what hard money is, and then how you source capital, and then how you deploy capital.
Cool. All right. What hard money is? Hard money is, I kind of explain it like organized and structured private money, right? If you walk into Wells Fargo and you want to buy a house in the hood with a tree growing through the roof, they're probably going to walk you out the door, right? We might not, right? We probably won't, but we're also not your aunt's money who's sitting in an account that you're going to pay 8% on, right? I mean, or 8% for. So, how are we sourcing capital? Well, let me pause. Before I move into sourcing capital. So, hard money lending is basically the quick and easy option for real estate investors specifically. What we do, it's a collateral-based, asset-based loan. We're most concerned about the deal itself. Obviously, a borrower must check some boxes, no doubt about it. We underwrite the borrower and the collateral, but what's most important is the collateral. Most important number to a lender is definitely going to be ARV, because that's where the loan amounts are based on, right? A relative percentage of the potential value. We're sourcing capital from friends and family. We're not a fund. We're not going public with advertising that we raise capital. So it's friends and family and my own capital. For that reason, we remain pretty boutique, but it's exactly what I want it to be. And to your point earlier, Mike, I'd rather do one loan and make $1 million on that one loan than do 100 loans, right? And so the idea there is to feed the hard money business such that it gets to the point that I can take capital investors out, do the same amount of loans, and just make more money. Keeping it boutique.
Yeah. So, I do the same thing, and to be transparent, like I've had folks from this Facebook group and podcast that have been capital, that we call them capital investors. You're calling friends and family. So basically somebody, for simple math, because I'm not very good at that, they give you $100,000, right? So your friend or your family member gives you $100,000. You're paying them a return, correct?
Yep.
And then you're loaning that money to an opportunity like Faisal's. I always say, like, you're basically curating deals. Like you're presenting it to the person that's that research scientist at Johns Hopkins that might make a lot of money, or whatever, has some money, but doesn't understand ARV, rehab, doesn't have the background in Pella windows and all that jazz. You're curating this opportunity to them. They use their money, or you basically use their money. You pay them a return, and you charge the borrower a little bit of a spread, right? And that's in essence how you get paid.
In essence, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, did you ask about specifically what our terms and all that look like? Was that the third part of that question?
We don't want to date this. I mean, you can speak in generalities just because we're recording this in January of 24. Obviously, money markets, as they change, terms change, right? So we used to get 4% loans. Now we get 9% loans, so I guess generally speaking, because me personally, the first time I got quoted by a hard money lender, I was like, how much? It was hard for me to wrap my head around it, but much like I just said with the paying to be in a room, now I realize, yes, it's going to be more expensive money than Wells Fargo, but Wells Fargo is never going to give me the loan anyways at their terms or their rates if the tree's growing through the living room. So
right,
maybe
generalized.
Terms.
To build on that, you've got speed. So Wells Fargo is going to take 60, 90, 30, 45 to 60 days or so to close. Last week, I was called on January 8th. I was called by a buddy who was very ill. He said, I'm down with the flu. I've got to fund 2 loans tomorrow. My top borrower, I'm just dying, man. Is there any way? Do you have the capacity? Can you step in? In less than 20 hours, I funded the 2 loans for a borrower that I've never met. Is there risk in that? Of course there's risk in that. I'm not an idiot. But I also understand this business. I know I had to underwrite him and underwrite the deal pretty quickly and pretty easily. I know what to do to keep myself safe. And so we did it. So there's not a bank in town that's going to fund a deal in 20 hours. There's no way around it, right? Hell, there's not many hard money lenders that are going to do that. And so we prefer 2 to 3 weeks when possible, of course, right? To be able to close and take our time getting to the settlement table, but we can move quickly. I've funded 4 loans now over the last 2 years or so. I've funded 4 loans in less than 24 hours after being presented the deal. So we can move very quickly. And I think it's worth noting as it relates to lending and the market conditions we're currently, the market environment that we're currently, working in. I've noticed that my average loan size has gotten larger, significantly so. And I wondered why that was. So I didn't underwrite. I kind of reconciled the portfolio one day and I looked at it. And we used to be, because I'm a rental operator, we used to be heavy in rental loans, where a lot of our borrowers are doing, it was more, almost like a little more than 2/3 of our loans were rentals. The market conditions shifted, rates got higher than they were during the last few years. And so I reconciled it, and it's now about 50-50. So 50%, flips and 50% rentals. Flips tend to be worth more than rentals typically. So it's natural that my loan portfolio has gotten, my average loan size has gone up. And so I've seen that shift happen. I've definitely watched that happen. But I think speed and ease is everything with hard money. It really is. I mean, to take on leverage is just the name of the game. I mean, if you're sitting on $100,000 and you want to do one deal, that's great. But you could take that 100 and spread it over 3 deals and scale and grow, depending on what your goals are. It really depends on what the individual operator's goal is. But taking on leverage, sure, it's more expensive money than zero your own cash. But leverage, I mean, by the end of that same year, you might have a hell of a lot more doors, if that's your goal, or have done more deals, if that's your goal, than you would have otherwise by taking on leverage. And if you're sourcing deals direct to seller, if you're doing your own outbound marketing, you're sourcing these deals direct, or you're getting pocket listings, and if you're in the agent community, there's a chance that you're getting a good enough deal that you build the cost of money into the numbers, and it doesn't impact the ability to do the. So leverage is everything, again, depending on your goal.
If it's used wisely, and that should, again, go without saying. If you're racking up credit card bills to, go on a vacation you can't quite afford, well, that's a little different than levering up to buy a deal, right? That's ultimately going to produce income. Right. But that goes back to that Rich Dad Poor Dad. If that concept's still relatively new to you, I'd recommend starting with that book. So, all right. So you're doing about how many loans a year, or I guess,
we're moving about, we're funding about a loan a month is where we're, I'm sorry, a loan a month. That's not true. A loan a week. Sorry. We're doing about a loan a week right now. The goal this year is to do around 50 loans again in 2024. So we're boutique in size. We're only working with a handful of we're not leveraged institutionally. We don't have institutional financial backing, no, REIT money, bank money, insurance money.
I just need one of those like sheiks, like one of those oil sheiks, I need a couple of those. It's the one thing I've learned with running ours as Jump Capital is it's just like anything. You either have a bunch of money and not enough deals, or you have too many deals and not enough money to fund them all. So you have to, but that allows you to kind of like pick and choose the better or the best deals, right? So, and that's something that I thought there's an imposter syndrome when I went into this new business, thinking, well, I have to be able to tell everybody yes all the time, when that's just not the case. If somebody comes to me and says, Shaun, I need a new loan, I'm like, buddy, I don't have the capacity. I don't have it right now. It's all on the street. That's a good problem for me to have. But also I still want to say yes to good operators. So you're right. It is a bit of a pendulum where as you're climbing, you've got too much money, no deals, too many deals, no money, until you get the scales of economy working in your favor. Yeah. Yeah.
I do want to let's talk about terms real quick. I know you kind of brushed over it, but so one of our mutual friends, he said the easiest way to break it down, because I've been asked this question dozens of times. So we'll say you're loaning money out at 12%. So 12% is of $100,000, it's $1,000 a month, right? And then every point for every $100,000 is $1,000. So if you're loaning money out at 12% and say 2 points, you're paying $1,000 a month on principal only, no interest, and every point is $1,000 that goes in the hard money lender's pockets. So if you have 2 points or 3 points and you're paying $2,000 or $3,000 per $100,000, like, is there anything else that you guys want to explain about loaning money out as hard money outside of that, Tyler?
I mean, well, yeah, you have your underwriting fees. You're going to have origination fees, appraisal fees, doc prep fees, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, here's my thing is all those fees are okay. They're going to be included in almost any hard money lender where you go to any one of us. But people get so caught up on it. It's factor that into the deal. When you as the operator are looking at an acquisition, factor all these costs into the deal and make sure it still makes sense, because that's exactly what we're going to do. We're not going to be like, oh yeah, this doesn't make sense, but we're going to lend you money on this property anyways. It's the coolest thing about this is, yeah, it may be expensive, but we are going to underwrite the deal for you as somebody who's done a lot of deals. So if they tell you no, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's, hey, this is not a good deal, most likely not a good deal that we would do. So you're basically getting, like we talked about before,
free advice,
somewhat of free mentorship, right? Hey, this deal does not work. We're not going to lend on it. Instead of maybe going around to 10 different people to find somebody who will say yes, maybe try to get better terms on the deal, or even more so, pass on the deal. So yeah, everybody calls them junk fees, but in reality, they're there. You're going to have an appraisal and an inspection. If you're loaning construction funds as well, you're going to have draw fees. You're going to have inspections for those things. They're all part of the deal, but you just have to learn how to underwrite with them. When I'm flipping houses myself, I know in my head, I usually use 4.4% of the purchase price immediately, because that's what I have found has got me to that finish line as far as the points and the interest, not fees, just points and interest. On average, it'll take me 4.4% of the borrowed capital to acquire a property, rehab it, list it, and sell it. So every single house that I'm looking at, like the most recent one, 186,000 plus 4.4%. Does that make sense? If yes, then I go and further underwrite it. So I just think instead of people running away from the fees, understand what the fees are, factor them into your deal, and then underwrite accordingly.
Yeah, and it's not like, so I'll speak for me, like our fees, I think, are fairly minimal comparatively speaking. But like you might see like doc prep fees for like $600 on there. It's not like I'm just putting that money in my pocket. Like I have to pay the attorney, and the attorney drafts those documents so that everything protects you, protects the lender. So it's, while there are fees on there, and yes, I do understand a lot of times they are referred to as junk fees, and there are certainly some junk fees on a lot of the closing statements I see. I've paid a lot of those junk fees, trust me, and I still do. It's like, oh, UPS wiring fee, this fee, it's like always. But my point is, if $600 is going to turn you off on the deal, don't do the deal anyways, right?
Not enough spread.
But yeah, exactly. So, and Aaron, you said about terms and fees. So those are the fees. A lot of times you can expect to pay right now. Again, this is timestamp January of 24. Most hard money lenders, at least in the areas we operate in, you can expect to pay 12 to 15% interest, and that's an interest only loan. And that's a big differentiation than like your mortgage on your house, where you're paying principal and interest, or maybe principal, interest, and escrowing property taxes and insurance. On a hard money loan, you're paying interest only. We're not escrowing property taxes. We're not escrowing insurance. All those things are still your responsibility. So, and as far as points,
right? Like 8 months, 12 months.
Yeah. Most of them will do, like, just for, again, easy math, 6 months, it's due. If you extend past 6 months, from 6 months to 9 months, it's an extra point. 9 months, 12 months is another point, whatever. Again, those are all things you can look at individually. Different lenders are going to look at in a different lens. And after 12 months, typically the loan is due. And for us, like, once that loan is called due, or it hits its maturity date at 12 months, the interest rate goes up. We hit you with an extension fee. And why do we do that? We want to protect our money, or our capital investor money, both. I use that term as a blanket statement. We want to protect our interest in the deal. And ultimately, we want to get you out of the deal so we can turn the money back over and reloan it, right? We're not in the business of long-term financing. And, hiccups happen. And I just dealt with that recently. But it's like, at the end of the day, the loan's still performing. I'm still making what we're supposed to make, if not more. But you have to have some, like, twisting or pushing of the screws to, like, get them out of that deal. And if you just keep it painless, they won't. So I don't know. That's kind of how we operate.
We're very similar to a lot of things you just said. We have 2 extensions that take you to a year, but then after that, we've had a few that went into beyond a year that I didn't have I didn't at the time have a structured plan for what happens after a year. Now I do, and it's painful.
This is my cousin Vinny. Hey,
Yeah, right. It's not physically painful, but it is. I'm telling you, it is. You're right. We need that money to pay off. I'm not in the business doing long-term loans. We want the money to pay off so we can turn it again and get those points all over again. And the borrower wins too, because if they pay off every 3 to 4 to 5, 6 months, they're building a business, and they're building either a cash pile from flips, or they're building a portfolio, and I can turn the money and get my points all over again, and everyone's happy. And so, yeah, I mean, that was a good recap, Mike.
Shaun,
Go ahead.
I want to end on one more thing. Shaun, or Mike, jump in. I got one more question to ask all three of you before we wrap this up. Mike.
Sorry, I was typing it into the chat. I was just going to say we're coming up on an hour, and I wanted to touch base at least on your coaching venture, and just kind of hear about that a little bit. But I also understand everybody's got a schedule.
No, so I was going to play into that. So funneling is where I was going to go with that. So your coaching funnels into your hard money lending. So I think all three of you guys are pretty good at funneling deals and funneling information into the next thing. So can you touch on that a little bit with the coaching and funneling it into the hard money?
So it's not intended to really funnel into hard money, but what the coaching is, I'll tell you when I was speaking and coaching, traveling around the country doing that, and I'd be on stage and I'd be in front of somebody, I'd say something that would help connect the dot. I'd see the light bulb go off. I'd see the white in their eyes, whatever I just said. I don't know what it was necessarily. It wasn't even intentional, but it would connect the dot for them. And I got a lot of fulfillment from that. And that went away when COVID happened. We were done speaking in big rooms. But then when I started lending and I'm sitting across the table from someone, and Mike, to your point, I'm explaining to somebody maybe why they don't want to do that deal. Or have you considered this? Are you planning to do that? And they're like, oh my God, I forgot about that. You're helping to connect these dots. I recently read a book and it talks about you can't connect dots forward, but you can connect them backwards, right? So if you've done it before, you can help connect dots backwards. And that's why the coaching became a thing. We do all right financially. There's an income that we're happy with, and who cares? Who doesn't want to always grow it? But now it's not just about the income; it's more about the impact. It's about both now. I get personal satisfaction from watching others succeed, and if I can play a small part in that, that's wonderful. And so the coaching thing has really been, I want to help newer investors to grow and establish the business the right way, build the business the right way from the jump, or help more experienced investors that are flailing to put some systems in place and kind of keep it structured and buttoned up. How does that benefit the coaching business, or how does the coaching business benefit the hard money business? A few ways already. Through some of these conversations, I've gotten some new borrowers, potential new capital, right, which is exciting. But also the profits and the proceeds I earned from the coaching business, I can put into the hard money business and I use my hard money business as an investment vehicle for myself. I don't own a single stock other than what my wife owns. I guess I bought into a stock portfolio, or I married into a stock portfolio, but I love the hard money business, and I love that model, and I like my capital. I like to use it as an investment vehicle. And so the earnings I make from the coaching business help to feed the hard money business. But also I get to make that impact and connect dots backwards and watch those aha moments. And I kind of selfishly get some fulfillment from that.
If you were to go back and give your younger self advice about anything, it could be your 18-year-old self, your 20-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself years ago?
Great question. I'd say probably take bigger risks and do it faster. Fail quickly, fail fast, fail today. It's a lot more painful to fail when you've got a family and a lot of financial responsibility riding on your decision-making, right? So to fail early, I've learned way more from my failures than I have from my wins. And I think we all could probably agree with that. And so I'd say fail early, take bigger risks, take bigger chances, think bigger. But specifically, if it were a new real estate investor and I was starting new, I'd say raising private capital is a skill set that any new investor should absolutely learn. It's a tremendous skill set. And I mentioned earlier how sales, those teachings from the sales company are still helping me to this day. When I'm in a capital raising environment, I do pretty well because of implementing some of those lessons learned back all those years ago. So fail quickly, fail often, fail early, think bigger, and raise private money.
I don't think there's anything else to be said. That's a pretty good ending right there.
As that is very comprehensive advice there. And man, I try not to get hung up on that. If I could go back and do this over, do that over, because I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have sold that. I should have bought this. I do that all the time. But yeah.
All right, Shaun, I'm going to go work on my EMT refresher. I appreciate you coming on here and spending some time with us. Stick around for a couple minutes. And if anybody has any questions, how would they reach out to you?
Shaun Magner everywhere on all the socials. It's not a very common name, thankfully. So Shaun with a U, Magner with an M. Find me on primarily Facebook and Instagram, but we're on all the socials.
Yeah, and you got a link tree that, I mean, I've got Monument Capital, monumentcitycapital.com, your Facebook page, LinkedIn page, Instagram.
Social media game's on point. I mean,
it's all tied in together with the same name. So it's not like
it's easy.
It'll all be in the show notes too. So if everybody wants to check it out, it'll be there.
Thank you guys for having me, man. This has been a really wide ranging and an engaging and kind of fun conversation. So I appreciate your having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for hopping on. We certainly appreciate it. And, we hope at least one person gets a little bit of value, maybe has that aha moment, whatever that may be. So thanks, Shaun.
Thanks, buddy. Talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, guys.